self and all of the good stuff that goes with that. Now I'm going to share this presentation with you. Kick it off. Okay. So what is happening today? So I'm going to look again a bit more at the audience. It's so important to have that focus. Looking a bit at tools, so planning, project management, customer relationship management tools that are out there. Some basics, some stuff in relation to getting gigs and preparing the pitch, what shall be asking for. So we do look a bit at the money, and a bit on training. So yes, back to research. I spoke about this on Tuesday, and it's just hugely important to put yourself in the shoes of your audience. Who are they? What do they like? Where do they get their information from? Because this is how you're going to, like, especially now, given that you can't actually put on a live gig, you have to rely on the internet. Have a think about who is normally in your audience. Who would you imagine are in your audience if you're really early stage? Literally profile them and go, they're generally of this age, they're generally of this gender, of this background. And then you have to figure out, well, where are they? Do they tend to use Facebook more? Do they use TikTok? Do they use LinkedIn? Where are they? And how can you get your information to them? Because there's only so much you can do with mailing lists, and you might not have anyone's email address. You might just have links somewhere or a Twitter handle. So you need to try and work on that. Learn as much as you can about your audience and what they like to look at. You can get this information online, and I'll talk about it a bit at the end. Look at venues as well. I mean, this is down to, based on your audience, where would your audience members go in a live venue context? And what does that live venue tend to program? How do they target? All of that kind of stuff. So you're understanding more and more the landscape of where you want to work, where you want to do great music gigs. And ultimately you're selling a product. So have a think about, you know, what it is that you're selling through. I know people don't necessarily like to talk about selling, but hey. This is all about planning. Now I'm going to dig a bit deeper in here. It's, I guess, what I think is really good, and it helps me a lot, is a CRM, so a customer relationship management tool. And there's a couple there I'm going to show you, but the main one I use is HubSpot. And there are free elements to HubSpot. And this is basically their homepage, webpage. There's lots that you can do. I actually, in my current role, I actually host my entire website with them, but it costs a bit of money to do that, so you don't necessarily need to do that. However, there's lots of free things that you can get out of using HubSpot, things like scheduling your social media. And what I find is the most useful, and what I would say be most useful for anyone, especially people managing their own time and managing multiple relationships all over the place, is the fact that you can dig into your contacts, right? And you can have a file on every single person you meet, and you can set it up so that you have notes. So you can create a note and type in things like, this person has 2 kids and a dog named Tom. These things are important actually to remember about a person. You want to kind of, and it's not to be incredibly stalky or incredibly weird about it. There's a lot of people and a lot of things to remember. I'm in sales and I'm still not great at names and remembering certain things. I remember faces and I remember roles and companies. But this is just a tool to help you manage the amount of information that's out there, so that if you have that information, you can put it in there because it makes it relevant. So you'll be able to go back to this file on this person and say, okay, I need to contact this person. What do I know about this person? Okay. You can even set it up. You might have to pay a bit to set that bit up, but you can literally link it to your email and have all your emails flow into this location as well. So everything's in the one place. You can even make phone calls from here as well if you want. The thing I find the most useful for me is the fact that you can put tasks against a person. So this is just basically about solid management of your time and solid professionalism in what you're doing. If you're talking to someone and you say, I'm going to get in touch with you next week, I'll give you a call. Put it into the system and give yourself a reminder. I mean, in this system here, there's other systems you can use. So this is the one that I use. And you can literally put in the date and the time, what kind of notification you want, what's it going to be, priority, but at least you get these reminders to say you need to contact this person today. So it just means that if you say, I'll get on to you next Tuesday about that, you get on to that person next Tuesday about that, because that matters. It matters that you're timely in your interactions and you do what you say you're going to do. Because especially if you're talking to people and you want to do something, say a gig in a venue where you've never done before, you have to build trust with that person, with that venue, that you are the right person to do that. And yes, the music matters, but also yes, punctuality matters, and doing what you say you're going to do matters too. And so you need to build trust in all of these things so that people will know, okay, I can trust this person. They will turn up, they will do this, they will do that. They are making my life a whole lot easier. And that makes it easier for you to get gigs beyond that. So this tool just helps you do that. It helps you remember everything. And there's lots of things going on for everybody. I have a long list of actions that I need to do with people, but I just find this tool really, really useful, especially notes, because if you will have a phone call with someone, or you'll meet up with someone, just write down the notes, a few notes about what was said, what was agreed. Usually best practice would be after you meet someone, you follow up with an email and say, great to talk to you. Just to summarize, this is what we covered. And I said I would do this, so I'll do this by this time. And then if you could send me that, I would be really grateful, and I will follow up with you by then. And so you've sent this email detailing out all the actions that have come from your conversation. And then you put in the reminders into the system saying you need to get this done by then, this done by then, and this done by then. And it just means that you're on top of it. You're not letting anything go. So it's a very useful tool in that way. On the social side of things, there's lots of different tools that you can use to schedule social media posts. I have everything based in HubSpot, so I use the HubSpot platform for this, but it's really handy because you can create a social post. It links to your whatever social streams you have. You can put it up, you can schedule it for any time you want. So you can spend half a day, or not even, you'd spend a couple of hours, right, planning out the messages that are going to go out, the video streams, the pictures, whatever you want to put out over a period of time. You spend an hour doing it and then it's done for the week. So you don't have to constantly be doing that every day. You know, you have to monitor a bit, maybe see if you're getting interactions, but at least you've done that body of work of scheduling out everything that you want to say in a given period of time. You can go on for months if you want. It makes life a lot easier. So just think about what you want to say, write them all out and put them all in. And as I said, there's a number of different tools for free social media scheduling tools. Literally, you just put it into Google. There's loads of them there, loads of them, and you can try out and see which suits you the best. To go back to the presentation, project management. So, okay, this is one more CRM tool, free CRM tool. It's made in Ireland actually, and one-page CRM. So I started with this, and again, it was a load of late activities that I was working on at the time. I don't use this tool anymore, but it was the person's name, the date, and the activity, and it would get reminders. And I just find it a very useful way to keep on top of everything. For project management, there's a tool called Trello. A lot of people like, a lot of software companies like, but again, you're just jobs that need to be done and moving them on to different phases. I'm not a massive fan of it, but it is a tool that's out there. Something I find really, really useful actually is just doing up and out Gantt. So if you are going to run a gig, so this is something I did for an event I was running years ago. And basically I just did it in Excel. And you can do this in Excel if you have it. If you don't have Excel, there's free Google Sheets tools that you can use. And basically I'm just planning out a Gantt chart. So a Gantt chart is basically this list of activities and a time frame and a kind of a graphical representation of the time during which and by which you have to get something done by. And so what I've done here is we're launching a space and an event and everything like that. So there was lots of different things going on. But we had a fixed date as to when that event was happening, November the 1st. So then you're able to start with the end date and work backwards and say, okay, everything has to be in place and ready for November the 1st. What do I need to get done? And when am I going to need to get it done by? And you can break it down into tasks. So we were doing interior design at the same time. So there was redesign work and manufacturing of work and printing and installation we had to put in. You know, we were doing a bit of design work and there was various stages of that needed to be done. We were doing a bit of work on our website, illustrations, business stationery, managing the catering and managing speakers. So this would apply to any sort of gig. So you're looking at, so when you're looking at a gig, you're looking at all of the different things that you need to do. So you're looking at the gig date itself. What needs to happen by the time you get to that gig date? You need to have tickets sold, golden situation. You want pre-sales, and you want to make sure that you have rehearsed. You know exactly what you're performing. You have all the technical gear that you need. You have all the people you need to perform. You have all of your production team. And so you can categorize all of these things and scheduling. Do you need rehearsals? When the rehearsals need to happen? Based that on the availability of the different musicians who you're working with. You're going to need to help promote it, most likely. So what are you going to do around that? Do you need to generate content? You know, some people hate the word content. It is what it is. Do you need to generate images, video, audio? What do you need to do to promote this concert that's coming up? And how long is it going to take to do that? So that you can then have it ready for this date, but when you need to be promoting it so that you can sell tickets to get to the gig. So you're moving along that timeline and planning it out well in advance. And this is my preferred way of doing it. There are many ways of doing it. And again, there's lots of different free tools online for these kinds of things. There's free tools to create Gantt charts. There's free project management tools. There's all sorts of ways of doing it. This is just the way I like to do it and have done it. And it's just writing, I mean, ultimately I'm writing it down on a piece of paper. I've worked with some young people and they're like, Francis, you still use paper. I do everything on my phone, and that's fine, but I like to lay it out big and scribble it out and literally, you know, I'm going to have a list, write a list, tick it off. It's extremely, extremely useful. So that would be just something I would highly recommend. Those Gantt charts and those planning approaches are very useful for making sure you're on top of things and going back. I mean, you also obviously have to keep going back and managing it and making sure you're hitting those deadlines. But at the same time, you can also put reminders either in your calendar or use the CRM system, which is put in something for yourself, where you have all of those tasks and the times by which things need to be done by, or the times by which you need to be talking to somebody to get something done by. And you just put those into the system so that you're constantly being reminded, okay, let's do this, let's do that. And don't forget, there are amazing production people in this country. So, and I guess a lot of people are unfortunately doing a bit of thumb twiddling at the moment, but I guess now is the time to start planning for what you want to do. What is it that you're going to do? A lot of people are going to be looking for live music as soon as they possibly can. They miss it, they need it. And so what are you going to do? And it might be around doing gigs slightly differently. You might do it in a different venue. It might be outdoors. What do you need to do to be able to do that? You need to liaise probably with Dublin City Council. You probably need to talk to some of these amazing production people. The events production people in Ireland are amazing, and there's lots of different people out there. I used to work on the Festival of World Cultures, and there's some amazing people still from there. Elaine, who runs, what's Elaine's company? I'll find it out. I'll put it on a link. She's amazing. And there's lots of brilliant people out there who do great production, and they can take away the pain of the practicalities of the gig, and you can focus on the music. But again, it's down to budgets and how you want to manage it. So I'm going to go back to the presentation. The next thing is about gigs. So there was a bit around how to secure and propose gigs. It's not always so easy, but again, it's about selling. So you're feeding in from other elements. You know, I say be innovative, visionary, and creative, but ultimately it's aligned to your strategy, and that's something that I spoke about on Tuesday. Who are you, and what it is that you're doing? So there's no point if you are all about traditional Irish music and the essence of that, saying yes, I will do something that's completely way off in terms of what it is. I mean, if it connects to you musically and it makes sense to you musically, absolutely. Because I'm all for cross collaboration, but sometimes people do things and they shouldn't be doing it. It's terrible to say it that way, but do you know what I mean? It's about getting the right mix. And if you're true to yourself, you'll get the right mix. It'll be fine. But ultimately, when you're proposing gigs, and it's about, you know, where do you want to go? Who is programming the music that you do? And know them, learn about them, do the research. What kind of acts are they looking for? And then you need to get to the person who makes that decision. And sometimes it's about making friends with everybody along the way to get to that person too, who are the gatekeepers at every stage. And you might be surprised at how influential certain gatekeepers can be. I know that, and I see it not just in music, that people will call up and be quite rude and dismissive to the person who answers the phone because they assume it's a secretary or something. And I'm always astounded by that. Don't be rude to anybody. But like, these people can actually be hugely influential in terms of decisions. And I've been there myself, where someone is a bit rude or unprofessional with me, and then they're just focused on the artistic director and the artistic director, and you're like, okay, that's fine, but I pay the bills too, you know, and you've just been really rude to me. I have no interest in working with you, you know. So just be mindful of how important everyone along the chain is. I'm not giving you any guarantees here on how to secure gigs, but I think the main thing is to understand where you're going and do that research, and you're more likely going to do it. The other side of it is it takes time and it takes repetition. So I think I talk about this, on the next things. This is about how to pitch. So this is coming from classic business speak, sorry. But the elevator pitch is a big thing, and it literally is down to, if you had 1 minute in a lift, what would you say? And the reason why this is useful is because people are time poor. And so you have to get to your point really quickly. How do you capture the imagination of someone really quickly so that you can have a follow-on conversation? The purpose of this isn't to pitch everything. It's the purpose of this is to get a better chat with this person. So you want to be able to say whatever you need to say so that the person goes, I want to talk to you more. So again, back to research, what do you want out of the pitch beforehand? You want to have more time with that person. That's what you need. That's the outcome you need to get out of this conversation. And think about what they want to hear and not necessarily what you want to say. So that can be a flip sometimes. And it's still about communicating what you want to say, but don't forget what they want to hear, because otherwise you're just talking at yourself, really. Eliminate jargon, be brief and to the point, and make it easy for them to say yes. So I guess I would write it out and figure out what you might say given a specific interaction with a specific person. This is what I want to say. And you end it with something like, I would love to have a bit more of your time to talk it through. Would it be possible to talk to you next week at some time? And put a time-bound question in there. Just don't say, I'd love to talk to you sometime. They'll say, yeah, no problem. But you say, can I talk to you next week? I'm free Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so then you have them think, okay, I'm not free Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You're like, okay, when would suit you? And then you push in that way. Well, you're just inquiring in that way. I mean, these kinds of things, and sometimes musicians would find it hard with self-promotion thing. But actually, it's hugely powerful when you're a musician doing it. But the artist is selling what they're doing. They tend to be the most persuasive. Also, I've heard it said a few times, those who are the most well-known performers in their field are not necessarily the best musicians in the field, but they have the best drive and they have the ability to put themselves out there. And there's no shame in that either. They put themselves out there and they work hard to build those gigs. So again, it's back to, you could be the best performer in the world, but if you're playing in your bedroom, no one can hear you. So that is important. And then also from classic sales, is that it takes time. So unless you're getting a categoric no, absolutely not, never again, what I would say is that you have to keep going. So if you were focused on classic sales, it will take about 9 times to contact a person before you might be getting traction. And you have to be okay with that. You're not necessarily harassing someone. Again, they're not necessarily not talking to you because they don't like you. And this is a standard reaction to this kind of thing. Oh, I'm annoying them. Oh, they don't want to talk to me. No, they're just busy. Usually the fact that they're not getting back to you has absolutely nothing to do with it. It's just life. And so you have to pace your communications, but don't give up. And just say, unless you've got a hard no, there is no no. So, and the good thing about it as well, I laugh about this sometimes, is Irish people find it really hard to say no. So therefore you can keep going. But again, it's about being pleasant in yourself about it. And when I say 9 times, it's not necessarily 9 times going on when I have the gig. some of those 9 points might be, I saw this article and it really made me think of something we spoke about the last time, and blah, 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 blah. You know, so you're giving them stuff, and that's also a very generous approach to networking and growing your network. Give into it to get more out of it, basically, but don't give up unless someone tells you to really stop. If there's nothing there, there's nothing there. And actually, it's really good to quickly know if there's nothing there, because then you know you don't have to focus any more of your time in that direction. Even if it's a dream situation, if it's not there, it's not there. Just be mindful that often if it's not there, it's tied to a person. If that person moves on, you go back to the venue again and you see, does the new person think this? But if there's a person there who's there and they're not going anywhere, and you've got clear and Carrick knows, just put it behind you and move on. There are other places to go. And then this is my favorite statement of when you're talking about what you're doing. So if you're in a situation where you're talking to someone, or you're auditioning for something, or you know you're pitching for a gig or anything like that, is there something outstanding that we haven't covered that might still have you hesitant to committing to this project? Perhaps we can address that now. And you can say it in any way that you want, but basically you're saying, is there any reason right now that you think no? Because I'm very confident that I can do everything that you need me to do to make this a success. So if there are any concerns that you have right now, maybe let me know, because I might be able to address them right now. And I'd be grateful for that. And people are often surprised by that question, but tend to be quite happy with the question. So like, actually, yeah, there is something. It's this. I'm not sure about this in relation to what you're proposing. And then you think about it and go, okay, well, this, and this is what I'm thinking. And more often than not, it's something that you can absolutely address. And then you're setting yourself up for more success. So you're trying to find any barriers that are there for you to get what you want and remove them as fast as you can. Does that make sense? No one can answer me directly. So I'll keep going. Money. So this is something I've done in previous workshops. So some of this data is not completely current, and sure, who knows, but I think it's good to get an indicator for you to figure out costs and stuff like that. So this is from talking to friends in the industry and from workshops that I've done. So in terms of pricing yourself, you know, there's a big range in solo versus orchestra versus new music. There's a huge discrepancy between singers and instrumentalists that grows as you get older, according to people I know. Huge variation between venues, festivals and organisations, etc. It's down to budgets, it's down to longevity, all that kind of stuff. The UK Musicians Union actually have a very good page, I'll put up the link afterwards, where they have UK rates for all sorts of things here. And you can look through and know that you can negotiate. You should try, why not? You can do it in a polite and calm way and say, is there any way this or the other? Sometimes there's no room for negotiation, sometimes there is. And the reason I'd say negotiate is often more down to soloists going in to negotiate the venue rather than rates for an orchestra. Rates for an orchestra or an ensemble are usually fixed, but for soloists, there's usually some room to negotiate. And it can be not necessarily just on the pay itself, it can be around expenses, travel arrangements, marketing, ticket sales, all sorts of stuff. The space and things you can think about. Know that it can be a discussion. You know, if you're going into a venue, and often there's a splits thing that comes up, only go into splits if the venue commits to marketing. And you need a solid commitment from the venue on marketing, because if they're not going to do any marketing, you're not going to be able to, you're going to have either A, an awful lot of work to do to sell the tickets, and B, no people coming. So you need to be really firm on that, and you can work with them on that, but you need a firm commitment that the marketing will happen. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to look at, there's a few questions as well, is training. So yes, this is essentially a training thing, but there's loads of free online training that you can do on all elements of the business side of things. So I'm not talking about performance, I'm not talking about the music side of things, I'm talking about the business side of things. And the business, yeah, most people would prefer not to have to do it, but it is what it is. And so there's Facebook tutorials, loads of different things you can learn for free on Facebook. Lynda.com, that's a load of training. It's for Twitter, but Lynda have all sorts of different things. and they were bought by LinkedIn. And so you can see here they have start my free month. So say like during a pandemic when you might have a bit of extra free time, you might be able to avail of this free month. And just make sure, my advice if you do that is that when you go in, you have to give your credit card details to get the free month, and just put in a reminder to stop it, so you don't have to pay if you don't want to. But if you think you have a solid month where you could look into it before you commit, you see there's interesting things here that might be useful to you, dig in. Why not? And then the other thing that I know that they're going to be publishing a whole lot of new courses on this website, but this is funded by the state. So if you're unemployed, it's all free, and there's loads of courses, and there will be more courses. So it was actually winding down a little bit because our country was nearly in full employment, but given the circumstances, I'm pretty certain there's going to be an awful lot more money funneled into this program again. And there's all sorts of courses, and all sorts of locations to learn from, different postgraduate or undergraduate courses, and there's all sorts of skills areas there. So if you're looking at different elements, there's arts and humanities training, business administration, law, business management skills. And so in those, you're going to find something that's extremely useful, I'm sure. And again, you just look and see what's possible, but it's another source of free education that might be useful to you. And then just don't forget about your transferable skills, always very useful. So there was one pre-question which was around, and feel free to ask questions. I'm getting texted the questions as we go. One question around how to stand out from the crowd when applying for auditions. So I think a big thing for that is, like you're applying for any job, know who you're applying to and what are they looking for. And that can be something that people just tailor it. You should be tailoring your CV for whatever job you're going for. Likewise, if you're going for an audition, you should tailor what you're sending in. So one would argue that you would need an online presence that is able to illustrate your skills in terms of what they're looking for. So say it's for a series of romantic music singing concerts. Make sure you've got yourself singing some romantic music up there that you can reference them to directly. It's important. Again, standing out is also knowing the gatekeepers. So understanding who are involved in the decision-making process and making sure you're delivering to them too. And it's about the detail as well. It's like applying for any job. I still get people applying for jobs, and we always look for detail where I work, detail-oriented people. And people will write, I'm detail-oriented in their email, and you're like, you're not detail-oriented if you can't spell oriented in an email correctly. And unfortunately, that's just what happens. When you've got a volume of people applying for something, even the smallest things will make people go, oh, and potentially move on. So you want to stand out, you need to put the effort in. If it's something you really want, you put the effort in, and make sure you're doing it. There's numerous ways you could do it, but I think it's about really understanding what they need and delivering to that. I hope I'm giving a useful answer there. Question here. Okay, so Muireann Sheehan was saying that she uses Buffer for social media scheduling and finds it very helpful. And yes, I've used that before as well. I think it was when I upgraded in HubSpot, I just didn't need it anymore because I had all the functionality there, but I had used Buffer before, absolutely. Okay, if you are approaching a potential promotional partner for gigs, at what point would you suggest including information on your fees? Would you include all of that info in an initial creative proposal, or be it better drip feed the information, capture someone's interest first and then talk money? I would say capture the imagination first. But again, it's about understanding who you're talking to. But yeah, if you can capture their imagination in a way that makes them sit up, they're going to want to talk to you more. So initial conversations are always short or shorter than you'd like. And what you're really looking for from the initial conversation is a longer, more in-depth conversation. And it's no more than any classic sales approach. I mean, certain things you need to have the prices up front. But I think with these kind of creative proposals, and that's kind of like the industry I work in right now, it can be quite tailored and quite bespoke what it is that you're doing. So therefore, it's okay to leave out the money in the beginning because you're like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. Because there's no point in coming up with money up front when you haven't fully agreed what it is going to be. So it's completely legitimate to say, okay, once we agree what it is that we're going to do together, then we can work on costings. You know, that's a completely legitimate approach. And so then just get them excited, get them involved, get them interested, and know that it's okay to say you need to be paid, because of course you need to be paid, you're a professional, and people will still be shy of that and not like to talk about the money. But you know, everyone gets paid for the work that they do. No more than friends I know who feel bad asking to parents for money to teach their children over the summer when they never normally teach over the summer. Everyone knows that everyone needs to make a living here, so just do it. It's nobody to, like, there's literally nothing wrong with it. It's completely normal that someone would get paid for the work that they do. So don't worry about that. But I agree, get them involved in the creative process, and the main point being that until you have that partner involved, you don't know what that full vision is. So you don't need to talk money yet. You need to go, let's get straight on what it is that we want to do, big scale, then talk money, and then talk refinement of what that is so that the budgets meet required expenditure. Do you know what I mean? So start big, and this is standard too. Start big. This is everything that we could do. And then go, okay, this is a vision we're all really attached to. What's the costing associated with that on both sides? And then come back together and say, okay, this is me, this is you. Okay, is this working? Can we make this work? If it is, happy days. If not, you may need to refine. And that also might mean refining your costs, but as a result, also the workload that you're doing, and come to a mutual agreement. I hope that answers the question. Okay, another question. Any tips for connecting with a bilingual audience? In my case, that's Irish and English speakers generally, but sometimes I do gigs in France, for example, and then French is in the mix. Yeah, I think mixing it up. I would say, well, I guess in the case when you're doing a gig for Irish and English speakers, you just need to make sure that you're able to speak to both. I guess in Ireland, the general assumption would be that Irish speakers speak English, so you wouldn't have to do any translation. But if you're speaking Irish, speak it. It's such a beautiful language. But maybe give quick explanations in English when you do it. I think that there's such a power and beauty in language, and it's such a musical thing anyway, that sometimes things are just better said in other languages. I'm a big believer in that. And so that's basically where I'm thinking when I'm looking at your email or your question. But also in France, big thing to speak French. You probably know that from being there. But French people really appreciate you having a certain amount of conversation in French. And it doesn't mean that you have to be, you know, completely fluent in it, but it can be, you know, bonjour Paris, comment allez-vous, you know, something like that. Keep it very basic. And, you know, do a bit of research in advance. You probably know people over in France, and you can say, I want to say this, and they can give it to you, and, you know, you can figure out how to say it and just put it out there, you know. But it's a good engagement thing for audiences. And I think just making the effort is what makes a difference. You could assume that in France, most people speak French and they have less English, so you'd make more of an effort in French, but they should have some grasp of English anyway. And French people, in my experience, if you're doing songs, love lyrics and love the understanding of what lyrics mean. So if you can give any of that to an audience in France, if it's song-based, I'd say they'd love it. Okay. Oh, another question. Okay. Do you think venues are open to booking independent freelance artists, or are they more likely to book those who have other financial support in place? For example, the touring and dissemination of work scheme. So I think naturally venues will, of course, have some sort of preference to groups that have a bit of extra funding. Of course, they would. There's money there. It doesn't mean they're shut off to independent people, though. So it's just about then the negotiation of what it is that you're trying to do. So maybe they have a two-space venue, and you want to do it in a smaller space. I mean, I did loads of gigs where I had no funding and I just needed to go in and use the space. So touring and dissemination activities is limited. There's only so much. You can't fill a year with what's funded by the Arts Council on that. So it could be just around then the timing of when you do your gig. So look at when they have a lot of stuff on and when they have fallow periods that they might need to fill with something else, and that's where you pitch yourself. So they need to have constant flow of activities going through their venues, and sometimes just around that. But I mean, when I was managing Crash, there was only so much funding there. You just went out, and half the time I was just renting the venue, you know, and just doing the gig that way. Very hard with contemporary classical music because, you know, no one ever thinks you'll sell any tickets for contemporary music, but you do. They tend to all come up on the day, on the night, and don't buy in advance, but still. Yeah, I mean, again, it's down to who's the venue, who do they book, does it make sense for you as an artist? There's no point in going to somewhere that's heavy metal only and you're a trad player, you know what I mean? I'm sure you know that, but that would be basically that. Tailor it, but I can't see why there wouldn't be any problems with that. I don't think there are any other questions. So let me just do a super fast check on Facebook, on Music Network. Nothing. Yeah, I think it's refusing to take me into the matrix. Okay. That is everything. I didn't even share that. Sorry, you just looked at me looking at a screen. My apologies. I think that is everything now. Oh, there was one other slide that I wanted to show you. Which is this Tuesday the 19th. So next Tuesday at 3 p.m. Leisha O'Brien is going to be giving a talk on preparing for an audio recording. Leisha is an amazing recorder player. I've seen her perform with a buddy of mine, Malachy Robinson, also another really brilliant person in terms of putting stuff up on social media if you want to check him out. But Leisha will be on this platform next Tuesday at 3 p.m. for another free talk from Music Network. So, there is one more question just before I was about to, two more questions. Okay. Don't forget Leisha. Okay, so I will answer these questions. There's this question here. I work as a volunteer for a classical music festival where the niche is quite small, doesn't attract large audiences, so always need sponsorship to make events financially viable. Can you advise? Yeah, it's tough. I know all about niche. It's very hard when it's niche, and sometimes, you know, you're going to have to cut your cloth. It's about maybe thinking in different ways, and it might be now, given the circumstances, time to start doing different experiences around the music. So maybe tying in local food suppliers and making it a more of a multisensory experience, partnering with different arts groups to make it a combo event. Pooling of resources is usually a good thing. In terms of programming, it can be, you know, is there something that you can do that brings in a bit of crossover, but still makes sense for the festival that might pull in a few more audience members? But yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's a lot of talk. You always get that push up. Oh, you need philanthropic donations, but in fact, philanthropy doesn't really exist in Ireland so much. It's more of an American thing. So there's not countless people with big wads of cash in their wallets to throw around. It doesn't really happen. So yeah, it's a challenge. So you have to be creative in how you're doing it. So if it's just not happening, what do you need to change while without going too against the core of who you are and what you're trying to do? But at the same time, when I speak about you know, your vision and your mission and your values, they can shift, you know, and they might have to shift, because I have friends who, you know, they were like determined to go down a particular route and put a lot of effort into it and a number of years into it, but then they realize it's just not going to happen. And it's actually a very mature thing to say, this isn't going to happen, and shift onto something else. And I'm not saying shift onto something else. I'm saying things can shift and change. So you don't have to be religiously tied to a specific way of doing something. It's about probably, I mean, pretty certain it's going to be have to do things slightly differently. What more can you do to tie people in to make it more of an experience? There's one more question. Any advice on connecting with regional venues, for example, for a touring award? Should you go through an agency or direct? I would say it depends on your budget. Sorry, it depends on your budget. I say that flippantly, but it's down to, do you, like, agencies cost. So do you have the time to invest in putting in these contacts? Then do it yourself. You can do it yourself. I've done it countless times myself. And actually the regional venues are quite amazing, you know, and some of them are in such phenomenal locations and they have brilliant audiences. They may not be massive, but they're brilliant audiences. And I know from my time in Crash and even since then, Crash has always done really great work in completely random locations around the country. And it's just about, again, back to research and connecting in, picking up the phone and calling somebody and saying, how is that? How do you book? What do you look for? You know, you can ask these questions. But I would say if you have the time, do it yourself. It saves you money and gives you a lot more control over what's being said and what's being arranged. But again, down to whether you have the time or the budget to do either or. Okay, so it is nearly time up. And I don't think there's any more questions. But thank you very much for your time. Again, Leisha is on next Tuesday at 3 p.m. and it's all about preparing for recordings. She's a brilliant musician and a great performer. So I think she'll be putting in something really great next week. So thank you for your time. Yeah, no more questions and all the best.